So, we're back. We had a mild absence due to a busy convention weekend that kind of bled over from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Not to mention there was also a wrestling event that happened that same weekend. So we uploaded the episodes that we filmed, well, recorded in this case, early.
Yep.
Some of them, so you guys kind of got a batch of episodes on Thursday, and then it was radio silence from us up to this. So just to touch on that, we're not dead. We
Nope.
just
Quite alive. Quite alive, actually.
uh, we just uh, we just had a very busy. You guys are going to experience the same thing when TFCon rolls around. Um, so the first topic we're going to be jumping into right away is 2 days ago of this recording, which will give you guys an idea of when we recorded this. We celebrated the 31st anniversary of the original 1986 Transformers movie. Probably the most important piece of anything Transformers in my life, anyhow. Um, I mean, just to touch up on, for Wendell is, that date is he wasn't born yet,
Nope.
but he would be soon, not soon afterwards. He would be
Hey,
born.
what's up?
Yeah, he'd be popping out after and going, "Hey, how you doing?" But during that date, I know for a fact because I saw the original '86 movie in theaters, but I know for a fact that I did not see it on its launch day. I actually looked up the exact day that it came out, and it was a Friday, and I know 100% I didn't go on a school day to see the movie. Um, I know I did see it on a weekend, and it was with my next door neighbor. It was the first piece of anything Transformers fiction I ever saw, of anything. And the only reason why I went to see it was because my neighbor was going to go see it. He was going to go see it with his mom, and he was just like, "Oh, we're going to go see the Transformer movie." And at that point, I didn't know what Transformers were. I think the only stuff I really enjoyed, and you're talking like 3-year-old Daniel here. The only thing I really enjoyed a lot was my Atari. Like that was, I liked it, my Atari and Sesame Street. That was kind of like
Mm.
the two things that were a big part of my life probably around that time in 1986. Atari games were really cheap back then, and so was the system because this is after the video game crash of '83.
Mm.
So my parents would get like Atari games for like $5 from consumers. So
Yeah, yeah.
so anyways,
Get him cheap.
not to go off on a tangent there, but so up to that point, Transformers was like this unknown thing to me. My neighbor was gonna go see the movie, so I was like, sure, what the hey, I'm gonna come with because I do whatever you do, you
Hmm.
know. And that
How old
movie,
was your neighbor at the time? If you were three, how old was this
he was
person?
6. He
Oh,
was
wow.
my friend Victor. I'll give a shout out to him. He was my neighbor. He was 2 houses away from me.
Mm.
Um, he lives in Toronto now.
Do you know a Protoman? Who?
Who the
Who the
fuck?
hell calls himself that?
I don't think he. You know what? I don't think he ever encountered that name because he was literally my next door neighbor right up until I moved out. So and that
Mm.
was like 2010. So he again we always it's one of those friends that you just go in separate paths in life later. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So and also because he was 2 years older, so when high school came around, he hung out with his crew of people.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so point being is we went to see the movie, and he was very familiar with Transformers. He was 6 at the time. He was already a fan up to that point, and he just was so excited to see this. So I was just like, okay, let's see what he's so excited about. And man, that movie again, it. I always say to people like, when was that moment when you realized you were a Transformer fan? And I always say, if you could pinpoint it, it was when Hot Rod is holding Daniel and he goes, "If you want to ride, Dano, ride in style," and he transforms into the car. And also up at that point, I was just like, that is so freaking cool. Like I was just like, because the first chunk of the movie, you don't really see transformation very well. At most, you see Megatron turn into the gun and shoot Brawn.
Yeah.
Even when Ironhide transforms, at the beginning of the movie, he actually is behind a panel when he does it. They almost hide the transformation. Like
Gotta save that money, man.
yeah, the beginning of the movie, like you don't see much. You see the Unicron eating people thing. You see again, I think you see Soundwave transforming into a tape cassette, which is, from my perspective, okay, Transformers turn into things, but Soundwave turned into this very uninspired tape deck from my perspective, and this guy turned into a gun. So there wasn't really much that was, but it was that first major transformation, and it was so dynamic with Dare playing in the background and
Hmm.
Hot Rod turning into that car and the engine revving, and me being a car lover years later, I would not be surprised if there was some domino effect with that. um, and being a mechanic, it's just that whole scene, that sparked it. That sparked it completely. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's because the kid's name was Daniel." I don't even, in all honesty, I don't remember the kid's name the first time seeing it. And after seeing the movie, going home and watching season 2 and season 3 episodes, I thought the kid's name at first was Spike,
Right,
because
right, yeah, yeah.
I only saw the movie once up to that point. I didn't make the connection with the dad being the older one in the movie. Like again, you're 3 years old, you see a movie for the first time. There's only so much information you retain,
Hmm.
and I loved the hell out of that movie. And I remember walking out of that theater with my friend and asking my dad, "Get me the red and yellow robot," you know. And my dad went out and got me the red and yellow robot blaster, the wrong robot, but I don't blame my dad. Um, he didn't know any better, but ended up my first Transformer was Blaster indirectly as a result of it, and then I would get a whole bunch of MicroMasters afterwards. My very first
Blaster,
Transform,
the base former, right?
well, yeah, that's what Wendell's referring to. Is the irony was when I was a kid, all I had was Blaster and a handful of MicroMasters, and I used to pretend that my Blaster was Autobot City. Like I'd lie him down on the cassette mode. I'd lie it down, and I'd put the arms up like in a half transformation and pretend it was like an Autobot City. Fast forward years later, when we have the Titan Returns line, and Blaster has a base mode. And I was just like chuckling to myself because it's like, wow, when I was a kid, I used to do that. Like I used to pretend Blaster was Autobot City. So,
I wouldn't be surprised if there was a bunch of kids that used to do that.
well, because
Like they
Blaster
would
was a
get that
huge
one
toy.
big one, and then all little micromasters. Because like micromasters are like this set price point where your parents look at it and they're like, four in a pack.
Yeah.
I'd be stupid not to buy this. Here, you have four toys in one go, and you're like, yeah,
What?
four of them.
And especially considering that Blaster, if you put him in robot mode next to like say Metroplex, he's not too much shorter from him.
Yeah,
He's a
exactly.
pretty large. I mean, he's not a bulky G1 toy, but he's a pretty tall G1
Yeah,
toy
he
for his
expands.
era. Yeah, he does. And he stands like, I don't want to say neck and neck, but he's pretty close to that with Omega Supreme and Metroplex and stuff like that. So you put him with a bunch of Micromasters that are barely, an inch and a half Transformer
Mhm,
toys,
mhm, mhm.
and he looks like this humongous hulking Autobot City. And again, the beauty of a childhood and imagination. Just wanted to just talk about the '86 movie because it was a big part, big part of my child. And I always felt, going into my teenage years and stuff, that the '86 movie was just the coolest thing ever. Like it's
Yeah.
just like I remember in high school, um, you could bust out that VHS and play it for people, and people would. It's not a cartoon. It was just this badass, hair metal movie from at the time only 10 years ago. Like you'd be watching it and say like 1997, 1998, and it was only a 10-year-old, 11-year-old movie at the time, but it was just this badass movie that had balls. Not to mention anime wasn't really in full swing just yet, so it was just this amazing thing. And I remember even bringing it to, like, there was this humongous arcade slash card store in Montreal that had this big screen TV called Black Lotus Cafe. It doesn't exist anymore, but and he would just have this huge screen TV. And the owner, I was just like, "Hey, Lampro, I'm gonna bring in this VHS of the '86 movie. Do you mind if I play it?" And he's like, "Sure, no problem." And I remember bringing it, and just the crowd that grew from playing that movie publicly, and people just like, everyone, the nostalgia before there was nostalgia, people in like 1997 going like, oh, I remember Transformers, and just the movie being so dynamic and awesome, and every walk of life of every kind of guy, whether it be like a 20-year-old playing arcades or a 7-year-old, just like renting a game, everyone was just glued to that big screen TV that was at the time, man, like it was a huge TV back
Yeah, I
then.
remember that. I don't know how that even existed. Was it like a projection or something
No,
like
it
that?
wasn't a projection. It was an actual legit huge television that he bought. And this is before flat screens, keep in mind, people.
Yeah,
Like, this was
big,
like a
big tube.
big mofo television that this guy had that was like, I don't want to say like a quarter of a theater screen. It's less than that, but it was pretty damn big. It was like, and he used it to just play whatever on the TV while people were in the stores. And he had couches there, and then, he kind of had like a half cafe set up. This was just this crazy store that was an arcade slash anime store slash card store slash rental store. It was just too good to
It
be
was
true.
everything.
Yeah, it was too good to be true kind of place. But and I remember just the '86 movie was just this cool thing you could whip out and play, and everyone would just get into it if they were of that age group, that just enjoyed robots kicking the shit out of each other, and it was. I always loved Transformers for that, because up to that point, especially in like the 90s, you had G1, you had Beast Wars, and you had the '86 movie. And Beast Wars was awesome just because it's Beast Wars. The '86 movie was awesome because it's the '86 movie, and G1 was classic
Yeah.
because that's what people remembered. So there was nothing, embarrassing about Transformers in my opinion, especially during that era.
And
You were.
then the fact that they actually tied it together, the movie and Beast
Oh yeah,
Wars,
with the
and the
exception of.
fact that like Black Arachnida's like, no, wait a minute, Starscream died here. He didn't just fade like he didn't fade off. He didn't die in the battle against Unicron. He was already dead at that point. And you're like, it takes place in the same
Well, that's
universe.
just it. And up to that point, too, I mean, with the exception of, let's say, the Marvel comics, there really only was one continuity you had to really worry about, and then the
Hmm.
splinter continuity of the Marvel comics. But, there was only the one ongoing continuity. If you really got into the deeper stuff with the Japanese stuff, it was an ongoing Japanese and American continuity. But otherwise, you know, there wasn't much of Transformers fiction, and what did exist was so awesome. Like now you look at Armada and go like, yeah, you wouldn't show that to a friend and go, this is why I love Transformers. You know what I mean? But back then there wasn't anything like that would make you go, oh, Beast Wars was amazing. I don't care what
Yeah.
anyone says. Like it was the best writing of Transformers that a grown adult could watch it and appreciate it for what it is. The '86 movie was it had balls.
Didn't Paul Dini write a bunch of that as well? I think
No, it was Simon
for Beast
Furman.
Wars. I mean,
Beast Wars, its biggest claim to fame, in terms of the episodes that everybody loves per se, is more so like Simon Furman. But then you have the likes of Bob Forward, who was another one that was, I mean, we had a TF Con in the past. We had Bob Forward as, I'm trying to remember which TF Con it was, but I know that we had him as a guest, and man, oh man, like this guy does not realize how much of an impact he had. You
who
know,
in
uh,
particular again?
Bob Forward, he was the writer
Oh,
for Beast Wars, and I
my
mean,
bad.
he like the episodes that he wrote, with the exception of the ones that Simon Furman did, were some of like the most important episodes in Transformer history.
Mm,
From Code of Hero, Agenda, Optimal Situation, The Trigger, Other Voices, Coming of the Fusers, all the key episodes were written by Bob Forward. And this is a guy that, like, he is, and he doesn't get enough credit. He really does not get enough credit for everything that he's done, because he's done, like, Beast Wars alone to me is something to be proud of. But I mean, this is a guy that when you look at his resume, you go like, oh shit, he did X-Men Evolution, like he did Biker Mice from Mars. He did trying to remember what else he did. I think he did Super Mario Brothers Super Show.
Mm.
I know that I know he did some episodes. I don't know how much of it he did.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
but I mean, he's done quite a bit of a lot of stuff. But Beast Wars, I mean, that's just, and I'm surprised he doesn't do more conventions because this
Maybe
guy.
he's working.
No,
Maybe no. Maybe he's
you're probably totally right. Maybe he
he's
is
probably
working,
working.
but it's just this guy. I mean, we're getting into a Beast Wars tangent here, but this guy, like,
You're getting into a Beast
yeah.
Wars
Anyways, back to the '86 movie. I loved it. It was amazing. It's probably the most important piece of Transformer fiction to me in terms of why I'm a fan today. And I'm just happy to celebrate it. Let's throw it to you, Wendell.
For me, I mostly got into the actual cartoon of G1 when they did G2 on ABC, and I went, and before that I think I had the two-parter of The Return of Optimus Prime, so I considered that to be the movie as a kid growing up. I think I got that through, I think it was either Sears or Consumers Distributing had a promotion where if you bought a Transformer toy or a set or something over a certain amount, you got this tape for free, or the tape was thrown in.
Hmm.
So at one point in elementary school, me and my mom got uh, video, a membership at a video club, and I walked in and I was like, wait a minute, why are there three cassette tapes of Transformers? So the first one that caught my eye was Transformers the movie. So I picked that up and I watched it, and I already had a bit of knowledge of the characters and stuff. So watching them die was not yeah, traumatizing, but that same feeling you get when you get a little bit older and you watch The Lion King and Mufasa dies, or you watch something else and like a character you like dies.
You know what's funny? Just to jump in there, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
The one thing that was interesting with my experience watching the '86 movie for the first time was all the characters dying that I had no idea who they were. And even Optimus Prime dying wasn't a big impact for me. And I always equate it to when you watch Star Wars Episode 4 for the first time, the very first Star Wars movie,
Hmm.
and when Obi-Wan dies, it's sad, but you're still more concerned about Luke Skywalker getting out of the Death Star.
Yeah,
And it's kind of the same thing where it's like when Optimus died, man, did they ham it up and they made it really sad.
yeah,
But at the same time, I'm still more concerned about that red and yellow robot. You know what I mean? And is
yeah.
he
Exactly.
okay? And anyways, that's it was the same thing. Like I didn't really have kids crying in the theater. That didn't really happen.
Hmm.
um, but I know that like supposedly it was a big deal. You know.
Yeah, it's very much a big deal. Like you're watching the leader after he just laid waste to the enemy team.
Oh yeah.
Like that whole opening scene and everything. Um, I remember one of the memories I had. I just remembered that I really, really my favorite scene in that whole movie is when uh, Galvatron comes and kills Starscream, and he just crumbles, and like that's the end of that. And I remember I was just really excited. I was like, "Yeah, you finally had it coming to you, Starscream." I was just like super happy, like just to see a character that always got in the way, was always in it for himself, was always scheming,
Had it
but
coming.
had it coming. Just seeing him get laid to waste. I remember that was super awesome. And then being a little bit confused that Weird Al was in the movie. I was like, that's not a Weird Al movie. That's not a Weird Al song. Is it a Weird Al? Like, I remember I knew of him. I knew him. I knew some of his music. And I was like, how come I've never heard this song? You know? Like, that was, yeah, at the time, it was an obscure song. Dare to Be Stupid was kind of obscure. And,
And fun
he,
fact: the only reason why actually that song was in the movie was because all the other songs that were on the track were everything was with the Scotty Brothers label
mhm.
at the time, and so was Weird Al. So they were just kind of
Ah,
like, well, we have this one scene, and why not, you know? And
yeah.
and they just kind of like dipped into their library of what they had at the time that was current music,
Mm.
and the rest is history.
Well, that's true. Because I remember, I guess that song would only be on that soundtrack if it even was on it.
There,
Because
I have a tape cassette of "Dare to Be Stupid" being the feature of the cover of that tape cassette.
okay, okay.
So
Because I know recently Weird Al came out with an album and it was all of his obscure songs. So you have like Harvey the Wonder Hamster, the intro to his TV show he had in the 90s.
mm,
Dare to Be Stupid's on there because it did have a music video. And
Dare to Be Stupid actually was featured on his '90s TV show many times. Even on the intro once in a while, if I remember
oh,
correct.
Bad Haircuts on there, which is like a spoof of
Not the intro, the outro. Excuse me.
Bad Haircuts on there, which is a spoof of Prodigy's Firestarter.
Okay.
That appeared on his TV show. But anywho, digressing. Um, but a lot of fond memories. I remember renting that movie quite a bit, and then the other two cassettes that were there was not Scramble. Is it Scramble? No, it's not Scramble City. What was the
The
two-parter with Metroplex and Triptychon?
all that exists in terms of VHSs up to that point, um,
Early
in
90s.
the early '90s, where you had the '86 movie,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had FHS Family oh no FHE, excuse me, Family Home
Yeah,
Entertainment, the big fat boxes of season one episodes. That
but
was about it. And then what you had, which was Return of Optimus Prime Part One and
mhm.
Two.
Yeah,
Scramble City was never released officially in America
but
at the time.
I because I remember they had the two-parter of uh, Metroplex versus Triptychon.
You might have had. I know that Europe got a few interesting VHSs at some point with interesting
Mm.
box art on them. You might have had Five Faces of Darkness, maybe
I
parts one,
th-
two, and three, four, and five. I don't know. Maybe parts one and two on a VHS. I know that there was a lot of obscure VHSs kicking around
mm,
during different eras of G1, and maybe into the 90s. But I mean, in Canada, to my knowledge, we had those FHE ones of season
yeah.
one. Then in the mid to early 90s, Rhino started doing VHSs, but they were also season one stuff,
Okay.
and the '86 movie. But I
All
mean,
right. So it would have been Rhino
I
then.
could be wrong. I could be wrong because there was a lot of other VHS companies putting out Transformer product. Um, so it's a possibility you might have saw something that just came from Europe, which would not be a surprise because a lot of that stuff does show up in Canada.
Yeah, pretty
So, and
much.
it was region free at the time. So,
Hmm. But yeah. So a lot of fond memories about the movie. Watching the new guy Hot Rod become Rodimus Prime and kind of be like, why did Rodimus get in the way of Optimus?
oh
Why did
god,
he? Why did he didn't listen to the leader? What is he doing?
most
Oh
hated
no.
Transformer outside of Wheelie back in that era. Imagine back then people hated Hot Rod.
Yeah, getting in the way and everything like that. Out of the way, Rod. Out of the way, Hot Rod. No,
Yeah.
I got this. I got this. Oh no. I remember. Also, was it Radio Free Cybertron or was part some part of like Radio Free Cybertron with Brian Kilby and other people that
Back in
had
the
their own
day, Radio
stuff,
Free Cybertron and Tony Fitz did the ATT Buzz,
and they did
which was part
was
of it.
that the spoof?
He did a spoof
Yeah.
also with
So
it.
that was pretty
He
funny.
did a revoicing of the '86 movie, like it was like a dub over of it.
Yeah.
Which I really, I mean, to find it today, I don't know.
Lost,
um,
lost.
no, I wouldn't be surprised if you ask Brian Kilby. I think it's Transformer Radio now. I think is the name of his Twitter account, TF Radio.
Mm.
Um, I'm pretty sure if you ask him if those are still kicking around, because I know his Truck Not Monkey song still has a new MP3 version. So
Damn straight.
yeah, so I'm pretty sure you could probably find it.
But yeah, I remember watching that whole thing and just feeling very satisfied and very happy about it and just enjoying it because like you weren't seeing that in the TV shows yet, at least from what they were re-airing of G2 basically.
Oh yeah,
So like they're not on Earth. They go to other places. Even in the third season, they go to different planets and stuff like
that
that
was
and getting
When Flint Dilley became the head writer essentially of season three. That was like his primary goal was to get off Earth and just open it up.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I'm pretty sure that maybe bits and pieces of what's that last comic series of Transformers where we're all in the ship and they all just have to get along with each other and
Oh, you're
stuff like
talking about
that.
Morning Meets the Eye
Yeah, yeah,
with
exactly. You
James
know, like
Roberts.
bits and pieces of that kind of
Well, and
probably
that's
pull from
that's the
there,
beauty I find with the
or the
'86
theme
movie.
of it.
The '86 movie I found opened up the door to Transformers just being a very grounded Earth war of robots beating the shit out of each other, trying to sell a toy line, to being more of like it's a mythological, bigger, larger than life story where
Hmm.
now there's Unicron and his whole thing. The Quintessons were introduced, the Matrix, which then opens up that whole can of worms, a whole sea of characters that literally came out of left field because of this time jump that we supposedly experienced, and they never truly established at that point, they never truly established how big the time jump was. We're just
Yeah,
supposed to assume, okay, well, season 2 was 1985 and now it's 2005, so it's 20 years later, and we're just supposed to, I guess, assume that it's 20 years later. They never really stated what year season 1 and 2 happened in, but I mean, years later, like with Beast Wars, Black Arachnia says the famous line in 1984, so we then knew right away when that all happened. But
but I would assume that was also like a nod as well.
oh, of
You
course
know.
it's a nod. Of course, the same thing with die cast construction. Like everything was a nod to that. But it's just again why Beast Wars is so amazing. But it's
And
just
to
at
go
that.
back to the music as well, though,
Oh yeah.
like it's just very nostalgic, and just to hear people perform it live, may they be a cover band, an awesome cover band, or the actual people that performed it, I still get goosebumps
Oh
listening to
yeah.
it. I
Listening to
still really dig it.
Cybertronic Spree, which you're
Yeah,
referring to, doing covers of it, or
yeah,
me and you seeing it live from Stan Bush him fucking self at BotCon.
and
Um, Vince
what was his name?
DiCola
Yeah, and Vince DiCola as well.
doing
You know,
doing all the audio. Yeah,
and
the synthesizer.
very getting very lucky that a friend of mine found a compact disc of the soundtrack
Yeah,
and getting a piece of that. So I mean,
it
yeah.
was. It's. I mean, again, the movie is. I mean, to say that it doesn't get enough credit. I mean, I still feel that even though it gets a lot of credit in the fandom, I
Yeah.
feel that it should get even more than what it already is, in my opinion, because it's so important to Transformers, and maybe it's just a bias for me because that's what got me into Transformers was with the '86 movie and not season 1 and 2.
Hmm.
um, but it's just I find that it's such a good starting point because I've introduced people to Transformers using the '86 movie because it's not cheesy. It isn't, like, it's such a damn ballsy movie for what it is. Like, to the point, like, this is a cartoon with death and heavy metal music and explosion.
Didn't we also show that off in high school too when
Oh
we had
God, yeah.
the little
Oh
anime club
God.
and stuff?
Oh God, yeah.
But you somehow got the uncensored version.
Well,
I don't know
because
how
no,
that
it's not
worked.
that I had the uncensored version. It's that the version that we had in Canada by Rhino had the swear word in it. In the
Ah,
United States, they had a censored version. It had
mm,
the swear word taken out and the damn line from Ultra Magnus taken out. Again,
right.
what we had in Canada was a little more obscure than what was available in the United States at the time. But yeah, '86 movie, awesome. 31 years.